Most drivers ruin their suspension without realizing it. One mistake, one habit, and it's draining your wallet little by little. But if you want to stop throwing away your money, one overlooked step, done right, can save you up to $10,000 in repairs. We're not talking upgrades or expensive tools, just habits that change everything. Mechanics won't tell you, dealerships won't show you, but these tips are a lifesaver. Join us as we uncover secrets that repair shops hope you never learn. Number 1. Rust prevention. Rust is the enemy that creeps in without warning. It doesn't strike all at once, but it builds up slowly through every winter. Road crews spray salty brine early in the season, even before snow falls. That salt gets all over the underside of the car, especially on the suspension. Once it sticks to coil springs, bolts, or control arms, it starts eating through the metal. The damage doesn't show up right away, but it definitely will over time. Bolts can seize up, springs can crack, whole control arms can rust out. A part that costs just a few dollars might end up taking hours to replace if it breaks, just because it's stuck tight. Some shops have seen basic repairs turn into $1,000 jobs just because one rusty bolt snapped during the process. But a simple way to stop this from happening is spraying rust inhibitor over the suspension before winter. Products like fluid film or WD-40's corrosion spray coat the metal and block moisture. They spread into cracks and stay sticky through cold weather. Doing this once a year, especially in fall, helps the suspension fight back against the salt. It only takes 10 minutes, but it saves parts from rotting and bolts from locking up. That spray keeps everything holding together longer, even when winter tries to break it apart. Number 2. Cowl drainage. Leaves, pollen, and dirt can do real damage when they land in the wrong place. Many cars have hidden drainage channels near the windshield and sunroof. They help rainwater flow away from the body. But once those small drains clog up, the water has nowhere to go. It starts to collect, and that's when trouble kicks in. And all of it starts from a few leaves blocking a drain. Water pools right on top of the strut towers, one of the most important parts holding up your suspension. It seeps past thin plastic covers and sits there day after day. Over time, rust starts to eat into the metal. Bearings break down, mounts collapse, and the sway bar links wear out faster. Some people don't notice until the damage spreads. Rusted strut towers are expensive to repair, up to $5,000 in some cases. You can stop this early. Just use a small piece of weed trimmer line or a zip tie to push through the drains. Clean them out in spring and again in the fall before leaves and gunk turn into hard sludge. It only takes 5 minutes and you won't need any tools. That simple habit protects parts most people don't think about until they hear a noise or feel something strange while driving. Number 3. Bump stop replacement. There's a small part in the suspension that many forget about, even though it plays a big role. It's the bump stop. This little piece of rubber is about the size of an old film roll, but it carries a big responsibility. When the car drops too low, that bump stop takes the force so it doesn't pass straight into the struts or frame. Over time, though, that rubber wears down. It cracks, dries out, and slowly falls apart. In cold or salty areas, it happens even faster. Once the bump stop breaks apart, the suspension loses its backup support. Every hit on the road sends a harder jolt straight into expensive parts. Drivers might hear dull thumps when they hit dips or strange clunks from the front end, but most brush it off. Then, one rough pothole later, the strut might start leaking or the top of the shock tower might bend. Replacing all that isn't cheap, but changing a bump stop doesn't cost much at all. If the struts are already out for repair, the bump stops can be swapped with little effort. The part itself can cost under $30, and the labor is almost free if done during a strut change. Skipping it could lead to bigger problems, but replacing it keeps the suspension from taking hits straight to the frame. It's a small move that can protect hundreds in repairs later on. Number 4. Proper braking. It all comes down to how you treat the suspension just before the bump. Most people press the brakes as they roll into a pothole, thinking it helps. But what really happens is that the car leans forward. The weight shifts heavily toward the front tires, and the springs sink down before the wheel even hits the hole. The suspension doesn't have much room left to move. When the tire drops in, it slams hard against the edge. That impact doesn't just feel rough. It can bend the rim or knock loose a sensor. Even at slow speeds, the force hitting the wheel hub can climb way too high. It doesn't take much for damage to add up fast. A sudden impact can throw off your ABS system or bend a control arm. Some drivers end up with repair bills over $600, but this kind of damage is avoidable. There's a simple trick to help the suspension move the way it's supposed to. Just let go of the brake seconds before reaching the bump. That little pause gives the suspension time to lift slightly. Once it moves back up, it can deal with the pothole better. It's a small habit, but it helps the suspension hold up and keeps the rest of the car from taking the hit. Number 5. Ground clearance check and positioning. Ground clearance tells you more than you might think because springs don't last forever. Over the years, they sag little by little. That small drop doesn't always get noticed right away. The car still drives, but the angle of the suspension starts to shift. When one corner sags by just half an inch, it changes how your wheels sit on the road. That shift in angle is called camber, and it throws off how your tires wear down. When camber goes off even by a single degree, the inside edge of your tires starts to grind down faster. You won't see it from above, but in a few thousand miles the tread will be gone. Alignment also drifts, and you might feel the car pull slightly when steering. All of this builds up slowly, but it can cost you hundreds of dollars when you need new tires ahead of schedule. That's why checking ground clearance is so useful. Just grab a tape measure and measure from the center of the wheel straight up to the edge of the fender. Do this once every season, especially after winter. If one side drops more than a quarter inch, or if one end starts to lean, it means the springs are giving out. Catching this early keeps the rest of the suspension in check and stops the tires from wearing unevenly. Number 6. Rubber parts maintenance. Rubber parts do a lot of work under your car, but most people don't even think about them. Bushings, boots, seals, and links are all dependent on rubber to flex and move without noise or damage. Over time, though, heat from the road, UV rays from the sun, and road salt during winter all start to wear them down. The rubber dries out, cracks, and slowly breaks apart. That's when the real problems begin. A small squeak might not sound like much, but it's usually the first warning. Left alone, that dried rubber can cause bigger parts to shift or fail. A worn bushing can push a steering rack out of place. A cracked boot can let grease leak out and cause a joint to wear down. Suddenly, you're looking at repairs that run into the hundreds of dollars. But this kind of damage doesn't happen all at once, it builds up gradually. However, it can be slowed down just as easily. With the right spray, like a plasticizer made for rubber, you can treat those parts and stop the wear from spreading. Do it twice a year, in spring and fall. And it keeps the rubber soft and flexible. It works deep into the part and pushes moisture back in. That little step can stop the breakdown early and help your suspension parts last twice as long. Number 7. Regular warm-up. Leaving your car parked for weeks or even all winter might seem harmless, but it can eventually destroy your suspension if not done right. Most people lift the car and let the wheels hang to keep the tires from flat spotting. But when you do that, you're also pulling down on the suspension in a way it was never meant to hold for so long. Rubber bushings, especially the ones inside control arms and trailing arms, are designed to flex while driving, not stretch out and stay like that for weeks. If you leave those bushings under tension, they start breaking down from the inside. The rubber begins to crack even though the outside still looks okay. That slow damage builds up, and by the time the car hits the road again, the damage is done. You start hearing squeaks. The ride feels loose. Your alignment feels off. Even the struts might start leaking within the first few miles. It only takes a few blocks of wood or stands under the control arms to avoid all of this. When you support the suspension at its normal ride height, you stop the bushings from stretching out. Big shops, car museums, and fleet operators always do this because they've seen what happens when people don't. That small habit can save you from repairs that come out of nowhere. Number 8. Greasing. Suspension joints often wear out just because they don't get enough grease. These joints, especially the ball joints and tie rods, help keep the wheels moving the right way. But they sit low to the ground, getting hit by water, dust, and road salt. Over time, the rubber boot that seals in the grease can crack. When that happens, dirt sneaks in. The grease turns gritty and loses its ability to protect. Soon, the metal parts inside start grinding against each other. That grinding wears the joint down fast. If it goes too far, a wheel could even break loose. But there's a simple way to keep all of that from happening. Some cars have joints with little grease fittings, often called zerks. They're small, but they allow fresh grease to be added anytime. With a small grease gun, anyone can push clean grease in and flush the dirt out. Doing this doesn't take long. Many shops do it during oil changes for cars with greasable joints. The grease keeps everything moving the way it should. Some trucks that get regular grease jobs have made it past 200,000 miles without changing suspension parts. All it takes is keeping up with that small task, and the joints will hold up much longer. Number 9. Shocks renewal. Shocks often wear out without warning, and most people don't feel it happening. The front end dips more when braking. The car sways through, turns a bit more. But because the change is slow, drivers just get used to it. The problem is, those shocks aren't doing their job anymore. At around 50,000 to 60,000 miles, they start to lose control over the wheel. And that loss of control shows up when it matters most, which is during braking or in sharp turns. When the shock can't keep the tire firmly on the road, traction drops. Even for a split second, that makes systems like ABS and ESC stop working the way they should. The car takes longer to stop and the steering feels off. That extra bouncing also wears out other parts underneath. You might see tire cupping, loose bushings, or cracked mounts. Fixing all of that later adds up quickly, but this can all be avoided by changing shocks before they reach that point. You don't need to wait for a leak or a rattle. Swapping out all 4 shocks around the 60,000 miles mark resets the suspension. The ride feels tighter and the safety systems work better again. It also protects the tires and joints from wearing out early, saving a lot of money in the long run. Number 10. Check your VIN for free fixes. Many drivers pay full price for repairs that should have been free. Every year, car makers send out recalls and bulletins to fix known problems, often including suspension parts. But if you don't check your vehicle identification number, you could miss out. Some recalls cover serious issues like rusted control arms, broken links, or cracked springs. Others include technical service bulletins, called TSBs, that fix smaller things like suspension squeaks, tire wear, or steering feel. These don't always come in the mail. You have to search for them, and it only takes a few minutes. Just go to your automaker's website or nhtsa.gov, type in your VIN, and see what comes up. Even if your car is older, some repairs are still covered. Dealers might replace bushings, struts, or even whole arms for no cost, just because they were part of a service bulletin. One driver might pay $1,200 for parts that another gets replaced under warranty. Same car, same problem. The only difference is checking early. Make it a habit to run your VIN every few months. It's free, easy, and often saves hundreds. And it protects your suspension from wearing out early due to factory defects or known issues that already have a fix waiting. Don't miss it just because you didn't look. Number 11. Proper wheel sizing. Low-profile tires might catch attention, but they bring real trouble to your suspension. When you switch to oversized rims with thin sidewalls, you remove one of the suspension's best helpers. That rubber cushion used to take the first hit from bumps. Now there's barely anything between the road and your wheel. Every pothole, bump, or sharp edge slams directly into your suspension. Over time, that beating wears down your shocks, bushings, and bearings faster than normal. Bigger wheels also add more weight, which means more pressure on the struts and steering parts. The alignment angles shift from the extra stress, and tires wear down unevenly. Bearings start to hum or grind under the load, and soon you're dealing with serious repairs. Shops see this all the time. Blown struts at 40,000 miles, worn-out bushings, and tires wearing out far too soon. But there's a way to avoid it. Stick close to the wheel size your car came with. If you really like the style of bigger rims, choose forged ones to keep the weight down, and don't go too thin on the tires. A sidewall height above 45 series helps keep the ride smooth and the parts safe. By choosing the right setup, you save money, avoid early breakdowns, and keep your suspension working the way it should. Number 12. Angle of suspension. The way bolts are tightened can decide how long your suspension lasts. When a mechanic puts everything back together while the car is in the air, the angle of the suspension isn't natural. The control arms hang low. The bushings, those rubber parts that twist slightly with each bump, get locked into a stretched position. As soon as the car comes down, the bushings twist again, and that twist stays there every time the suspension moves. Even brand new bushings can fail early if they're torqued while stretched. Some cars even end up sitting unevenly, with one corner slightly higher or lower than the others. That twist in the rubber fights back and throws off the alignment. Over time, the tires wear out unevenly. The suspension starts to squeak, and the steering feels loose or unbalanced. The rubber wears out faster and the ride gets stiff and noisy. This kind of damage can be stopped by using a simple habit. After doing suspension work, always tighten bolts with the car resting on its wheels or supported at ride height. That way, the bushings sit in their normal spot. They don't get twisted right away, and they last longer. Taking 10 extra minutes to do it this way protects all the rubber parts, saves the tires from wearing unevenly, and keeps the steering smooth. Number 13. Overall suspension balance. Many drivers try to save money by replacing just one suspension part when something breaks. Maybe it's a single shock, strut, or spring, but doing only one side might lead to more problems down the road. A new shock works faster and holds more pressure than the old one across from it. That mismatch causes an uneven ride. Left and right should match to keep things balanced. When one side is stronger and higher, your car bounces differently over bumps. You might feel a drift in the steering or notice your tires wearing unevenly. That's because the newer part is doing more work. It's overcompensating for the worn-out one on the other side. That extra stress shortens its life, and before long it might start leaking or failing early. Drivers who take this shortcut usually end up back at the shop sooner than expected. They replace the other part later, pay for another alignment, and sometimes even replace tires that wore out unevenly. Mechanics already know it costs less over time to swap parts in pairs. By replacing both parts at once, your car handles better, tires last longer, and you avoid repeat trips to the shop. It's one of those fixes that feels smarter right away and saves money in the long run. Number 14. Leakage fix. Even the smallest fluid leak can slowly ruin your suspension without making much noise at first. Under the hood, leaks from the power steering system, engine oil, or automatic transmission fluid might look small. But when those drips land on rubber bushings, they start eating them from the inside. Rubber and petroleum don't mix. These fluids soften the rubber quickly, and heat from the engine only speeds it up. The bushings swell and lose their strength. Soon they start flexing too much and your alignment slips. You feel strange movements while driving. The suspension makes dull clunks, tires wear out faster, and by then, a tiny leak has caused hundreds in damage. Most of the time, drivers don't notice the leak until they see stains on the driveway or hear the clunk, but the damage has already spread. That's why it's smart to fix leaks right away and keep the area clean. A quick wipe down with brake cleaner during each oil change helps stop that fluid from sitting too long. This habit takes just a few minutes, but it protects every rubber piece near the leak. It's not just about keeping things dry, it's about keeping the suspension strong. Fix the leak early, clean it often, and you avoid the chain reaction that ends with a costly repair. Number 15. Gentle tire warm-up. Cold weather makes everything stiffer, especially tires. Below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, tire rubber hardens up and loses its ability to absorb shocks. That thumping sound when you hit a pothole on a winter morning, it means your tire didn't flex. The suspension took the full blow. The control arms, ball joints, and bushings all get hit harder when tires stop doing their job. The force moves straight through the wheel and hits the suspension like a hammer. Over time, that causes wear and tear. It might even lead to early failure if you drive hard when tires are cold. But there's an easy fix. Just take it slow for the first few miles. Don't speed up too fast. Don't take sharp turns, and avoid rough patches on the road if you can. After about 10 to 15 minutes of normal driving, your tires warm up. They soften a bit and start to flex like they should. You also protect your tires. Cold rubber plus low tire pressure often causes uneven wear or flat spots. That kind of damage lowers ride comfort and shortens tire life. Let the rubber stretch slowly. Think of it like warming up muscles before a workout. Your suspension stays healthier and your tires do a better job protecting everything underneath. Number 16. Steering within safe point. That hard clunk or humming noise when you turn the steering wheel all the way is not harmless. It means you've pushed the steering past the safe point. Most front-wheel drive cars use constant velocity joints, CV joints, that allow the wheels to turn and move up and down at the same time. But when you crank the steering wheel until it stops, you force that joint to bend too far. Once it goes past its limit, the parts inside start rubbing together the wrong way. Heat builds up. The rubber boot stretches out too much. In cold weather, that rubber can crack or split completely. Once that happens, grease flies out, dirt gets in, and soon, the joint wears out from inside. A torn boot might not make noise right away, but damage builds up quickly. Once the joint fails, you're looking at a full axle replacement. That means hours of labor, parts, and maybe new sensors too. To avoid all that, just back off the steering wheel slightly when turning tight corners. Let the wheel turn most of the way, then ease off a notch. That small change in habit takes pressure off the CV joints, keeps the boots intact, and helps the whole system last longer. It's an easy way to protect parts that are expensive to fix. Number 17. Avoid idleness. Letting a car sit still for weeks or months might sound like you're protecting it, but the truth is, the suspension suffers when it doesn't move. Bushings get stuck in one position and begin to dry out. Springs lose their shape from holding the same load too long. Shock seals start to harden and crack. Even cars with low mileage can develop problems like a sagging rear, squeaky joints, or leaking struts just because they weren't driven. Every spring, mechanics see cars that sat all winter come in with suspension issues caused by no movement. But there's a simple way to stop this. Once a month, take the car out and drive it for about 10 or 15 miles. That short drive gets all the moving parts working again. The rubber flexes, the seals get coated in fluid, and the suspension breathes. This doesn't just help keep the parts alive, it also helps spot problems early. A short drive can reveal leaks, noises, or pulls that you wouldn't notice if the car just sat. Starting the engine and letting it idle doesn't count. Suspension needs motion, not just heat. That easy drive every month helps everything underneath stay ready. It costs nothing and keeps problems from building up in the background. Number 18. End links replacement. That soft knocking sound over small bumps usually means one thing. Your sway bar end links are wearing out. These small parts connect the sway bar to your suspension, helping your car stay flat when turning. When the ball joint inside gets loose, the clunk starts. Most people ignore it at first, thinking it's just a small sound. But that worn-out joint sends every bump straight into your shock towers and strut mounts. Instead of spreading out the force, it slams into the frame. Over time, the mount holes stretch, the bushings wear out, and the fix becomes expensive. Most end links wear down after 70,000 to 90,000 miles. In areas with salted roads, they can go even faster. The mistake people make is replacing shocks or mounts first, only to find out the real problem was the link. That means double labor and double cost. The better move is to swap both sway bar links at the first sign of knocking, or even before it starts. Greasable aftermarket links last longer and handle bumps better. Just make sure to tighten them when the suspension is sitting at ride height, not hanging in the air. It's one of those simple jobs that protect the more expensive parts around it. Don't wait for the clunk to turn into a crunch. Number 19. Paint touch-up. Coil springs take a beating every mile, holding up the car while handling bumps, potholes, and road grime. But even a small paint chip on a spring can turn into a big problem. That tiny bare spot lets moisture and road salt in. Rust starts to eat through the metal, and after enough time, the spring snaps. It usually doesn't break clean. The sharp edge of the broken spring often points straight at the tire. Many broken springs end up slicing into the tire, especially when driving over bumps. A sudden flat from a hidden spring crack can cost more than just the spring. It can destroy the tire and even damage the fender. This problem shows up more often in places where roads are salted in winter. The salt sticks to the exposed metal and speeds up the rust, but you can stop that with a little paint and a few minutes of work. Check your coil springs once or twice a year. If you see chipped paint or light rust, clean the area, brush on the rust converter, and cover with rubberized or flexible paint. If you want to go further, slide a protective sleeve over the coils. That extra shield blocks salt and rocks. It's cheap insurance for a part that holds up your whole car. Number 20. Damage check. Potholes hit hard and fast. Sometimes you feel the impact right away. Other times the damage hides until it spreads. One deep hit can knock your alignment off, bruise a shock seal, or crack a spring. A few days later, you might notice your car pulling or see a tire wearing badly, but by then, it's already gotten worse. Meanwhile, it only takes 5 minutes to check things after a big bump. Look around the suspension with a flashlight. Pop the hood and check the strut towers. Check for fluid leaks near the shocks. cracks in the spring paint, or one side of the car sitting lower than the other. Those are signs of trouble. One cracked spring might not fail right away, but rust starts creeping in through that brake. Weeks later, it could snap completely, maybe even poke into the tire. And one damaged control arm could throw the steering off without warning. Most people skip this step. They assume the ride still feels okay, so nothing broke. But by the time they hear a clunk or feel the car drift, it's already turned into a $1,000 job. Checking early catches damage before it grows. It's the kind of habit that keeps you from getting stuck with a flat tire or steering problems on the side of the road. Which of these do you practice, and which ones will you start doing? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.